housing market isn't cooling.
A new report out this morning says taxes are the biggest expense for Canadian families.
The Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation is going back more than 75 years to look for inspiration.
Australia's largest steelworks is in the hands of administrators this morning, with the South Australian government engineering a snap parliamentary move to place the Whyalla facility into the hands of administrators yet again. The Prime Minister and South Australian Premier set to unveil a huge rescue plan later today.
In Canada, Australia, and the United Kingdom, 3 oceans between 3 countries. Now they go with the same step. On paper, they have very good economies. Such signifiers as ever-increasing construction and declining unemployment rates, along with skylines dotted with cranes, create the image. But behind the surface, there is an entirely different story on the numbers. The story of debts that never run out, galactic rise in the cost of living, and generations locked out of the future. It can be summarized as 3 movies, running on a loop of some sorts, only to then realize that they share the same script. The twist? It is not a fairy tale ending to such a script, and this can only be a twist. And you are not going to merely stare at the red flags at the end of this video. You will learn why they exist, and what will happen when they are ignored. It is in this way we separate out the force of money, power, and policy that lie behind the world in which you live. Without jargon, not in headlines vacuous, but don't tell the entire story, so that you may know about the storm before. So we had the best start at the starting point.
The company has been in financial trouble for quite some time. So it's been running at a loss, with a lot of money owed to different creditors, owing tens of millions to the South Australian government alone in unpaid bills. So it is unusual for a government to force a private company into administration like we've seen just now. And the South Australian government could have bailed out the company that owns Whyalla Steelworks, GFG Alliance, but it wasn't prepared to do so. Basically, I don't think they were too keen to give their money to the...
Debt is not always a bad thing. It is able to build bridges, hospitals, and opportunities. But in Australia, Canada, and the UK, debt has not only become something quite more sinister, the relationship between debts and the ladder of upward mobility has also taken a turn, and instead is serving to pull them down. We may take the example of houses. Debt levels in Australia are approximately 112% of the gross domestic product currently. That is, the national debt imposed by an average household is higher than what the country can produce annually. Canada, close tail, and household debt at nearly 100% of GDP. Government debt in the UK peaked at about 100.2% of GDP in 2016, its highest in peacetime. Why? Owing to the fact that the cost of borrowing has been low in the past decade, interest rates were very close to zero, and there was money flowing like water. People bought houses which were not really within their means. Stimulus was funded by borrowing by governments. Businesses took loans to grow or even to get past to make ends meet. It was good until rates increased. In Canada, the household debt service ratio jumped above 15% in 2023, implying that more than 15% of disposable income is used just to be able to pay interest and principal anymore. Incomes get sacrificed to replenish war-paid debts. Governments are scrambling to cover interest bills, and each additional dollar is applied to service old debts. That should be one less dollar spent on capital investments that lead to growth. It is not with a bang that debt crises begin. They start in a quiet way, when there are too many people and when they borrow too much and too long. Experience is everything. Sydney, Toronto, London is where it is at. Yup, I know the feeling. As in, you are competing in the home buying race, and the finish line is merely getting farther and farther. At Sydney, the median house value is approximately $1.6 million, and price-to-income ratio is 13, 3 times. The ratio in Toronto is comparable, and in London even more out of control. Approximately 20.6 times income. This implies that even young professionals with $500,000 annual income cannot purchase. It is not only houses. Rent, property, and even ordinary office space have rocketed up to the skies. There are spin-offs of this. Small businesses and mom-and-pop stores cannot afford shop fronts. A half of the payroll is spent only on having a roof over the head of people. Family reasons put off childbearing due to the affordability of houses. The governments speak of building more, but supply fails to keep up to pace, particularly when the speculative returns may be greater than the satisfaction of actually inhabiting a house. That is the danger. When prices of assets far outstrip their economic worth, they will be pushed down, sometimes gradually, sometimes in a manner that can redesign entire economies in a day. It implies that small professionals who get a six-figure annual salary cannot afford to purchase. It is not only houses. Space to rent, land, and even bare offices has been skyrocketing. There are spin-offs to this. The shop fronts are too expensive for mom-and-pop operations. And another point of contact? Time itself. The Australian population is aging more rapidly than ever before. 15% of the population was 65 or above in 2017, forecasted to reach 265 or above by 2057. The aging of the Canadian population is 18.9% by 2023, to 7.6 million citizens. Same in the UK, about 18%, 65 plus. The UK is broadly comparable, about 18% over 65 ors. With an aging population, that means less people work in places that collect the taxes, more gov spend on pensions and healthcare, less strong economic growth from a smaller workforce. Immigration has been used as a response to this, but this too comes with its own set of problems. Housing shortages, overstretched facilities, and communities at odds with themselves. It's a demographic device ticking in the background until it's too loud to be ignored. This is where it is frustrating. The red flags have been wishing death the last few years. Sustainable debt, speculative housing, and structural imbalances have been cautioned by the economists. However, in search of short-term band-aids, policymakers instead turn to fixing the causes. Similarly, in the UK, the debt that the state owes to the people has tripled since 2007, that is to say 36%, to more than 100% of GDP. The government alone had borrowed £20.7 billion in June of 2025 alone. Why? This is due to the fact that correcting the actual problems will lead to short-term suffering. And politicians are aware that no one will win an election on the basis of short-term suffering. So round and round it goes. Borrow more, spend more, promise more. In the meantime, the foundations are slowly rotting away. These crises may first of all appear to be different. Australia is relying on commodities too much. Canada, sitting in a housing bubble. The UK, battered by shocks of Brexit and a service-based economy frail. But look still closer. There you see the patterns fit. High debts on households and states. Out-of-touch housing markets. Aging populations. Kicking the can down the road governments. It is not three dissimilar storms. It is the same weather system, and these nations are in its way. This implies that the front pages with stable economies do not paint the full picture. It implies that instead of the US or China, the next giant financial crisis will actually begin in areas people assume are safe. It implies there is no difference where you live. Sydney, Toronto, or London, you are under the same precarious system. And this is what it tells the truth. There is no system that remains in balance all the time. At one stage, the figures have to add up. Loans have to be downed. Bubbles have to be popped. The question that you started this video with was, why are 3 of the most advanced countries in the world only near collapse? Now you know. They have gone out the same road, have been given the same advice, have fallen into the same errors. The number is appalling, and yet not despairing. The original start of change was because you see the truth hit home with your vision.